I'm Lisa Bowers. I work for the Engineering and Open University. I work specifically within design, and I work with 40 to 50 associate lecturers working in design and teaching design to Open University students. I heard about eSTEeM from a colleague of mine who was already working with a eSTEeM research project, and she thought I might like to get involved because it was a scholarly activity that would fit in with my managerial and day job, if you will. I had currently on the horizon, I had an idea that I would be involved in research through PhD research that I wanted to carry forward, and found that eSTEeM was a fantastic opportunity to open me up to finding connections with colleagues and other research-led staff that I could become involved with for the project and generally find out more about. I came to the Open University with roughly 5 years experience within working with inclusive design, working with people with additional need. My work involved working specifically with non-sighted artisanals in Yorkshire. They're artisans who work with touch and surface. They work with manual materials, medium and process. They tactually conventionally work in a studio, connecting materials together to create jewellery and millinery and all manner of artefacts. They wanted to be able to get in touch more with online and digital connections to creativity, and they had no real tool at their disposal that could do that. So I worked with them for about 5 years before I came to the Open University and created a haptic tool. Haptic meaning touch, came into play with what they were already doing and what they understood to be tactile interactions could be mimicked within the digital world. The haptic tool is very similar to a graphic stylus pen, plastic resin-based tool that you can put on a graphic tablets and scroll and make marks on screen, and what you scribe onto the electropad appears on the screen that you're watching. So it's not too dissimilar to some of the visually impaired students using a design stylus for their needs, but they would use it on a much wider scale, a higher scale, so they could see it. The visual impairment means they can't often see small detail. So the abstraction of the screen for someone using a graphic stylus, tablet and pen was too limiting because the abstraction was confusing. They didn't know whereabouts on the screen they were, they didn't know whereabouts on the image they were. So haptics allows that extrasensory dimension of feeling what's on screen, and through the stylus arm, which is based on we call it a gimbal, which is kind of like a hefty base. And it allows the device to create almost a magnetic repulsion when it feels a plane or a cloud of spots on the virtual plane. So you can feel a virtual plane on screen through the cloud points that are based on screen. The data is fed to the device, and the device sees that as a stopping point. So it allows you to reach a halt, so you can feel across. So one can feel a plane of a surface, gable end of a house, the side of a box, anything solid really. The non-sighted participants that engaged with the project had some kind of thoughts about what it would be, and it seemed to be quite complex to them when they didn't have the training and the knowledge and they weren't sat in front of the device to feel it and to understand it. They thought it was going to be maths based, and they thought they would have to be terribly academically based to be able to interact, and I don't think they really understood the nature of just use it, just do. And when that really got through to them and they just picked it up and used it, and it was interacting and they were perceiving what was in front of them, it gave them a whole new idea and emphasis on what their digital interactions could become. And I think it was a spark that I didn't expect to light as quickly as it lit, and the participants were absolutely over the moon with understanding what was in front of them, where before they had no perception of that and no tool to give them that door to open into that virtual world. I was amazed, and I almost could have paid some of them. They just said things like, well, I didn't perceive anything of it until I came, but then I started to think about how I would make a virtual prototype, and I have problems with making real ones, and I realised this tool would not only aid me, but it was also aid me to really perceive in my mind what it looked like. I couldn't have paid him to say better, really. I was overjoyed. The activities were down to the research. I did a mixed research base. I do this because I'm a qualitative, inclusive designer, so I'm people first approach, and you cannot find out about people purely through data. So I blended a metric which measured time, how long it took someone to create the prototype, how long it took to assemble, and how many times they collided with other shapes, or they collided with, say, the walls of the environment, the virtual planed environment. This wasn't a punitive thing on them, it was just so I could understand and decipher if using the tool made it clumsy for them to go in there and clunk around, or if they did it with ease and delicacy. The time between non-sighted and sighted and the collision rate were more or less the same. These are people that came to the day non-sighted from birth, had never seen a haptic before. They were given 5 minutes training, and they were able to come up with data that met fully sighted non-haptic users as well, but they were fully sighted and able to move around the space at will. Again, I went home that day with a big smile on my face. I was pleased with the findings, and as I say, the quality findings were also really perceptive of how they felt they could take this tool on, they could use it further, how it fitted into the OU policy, how it fitted into eSTEeM. They really were engaged with the tool and how they could, I mean, one of the guys wanted to take it home. Not really possible, but I was quite pleased he wanted to, because they just give me another hour on it and I'll be perfection, was the phrase I think he used. It was great, it was really great. As an academic, it's not always easy to gain funding to realise and add a stage for your process. There is also a lot of research skills that one has to come into contact with as you're working through, although you may bring a certain amount of this expertise with you. eSTEeM gave that offering of additional research skills, an audience, an understanding of expertise, a higher expertise, certainly in my case, and colleagues, mentors to advise you along the way. So it placed all of the ingredients that any researcher would actually give their left arm for. And that understanding that they were on your side, they were calling from your side corner, and they were pushing you forward to do what you wanted to do. And really that's all I needed, because I had the incentive, I had the concept, I had the expertise and the permission, I suppose they gave me the permission. To be able to involve OU students, and they helped me, guided me through that process. I wasn't as experienced with OU research as I am now when I started the process, and one's always learning as you go through life, and eSTEeM gave that stage to perform on, and the elements to help you. So I can't even begin to say how grateful I am for eSTEeM, and I know other colleagues are the same. I think my colleague who suggested I go to eSTEeM, I think I still owe her a G&T at some point. But without her, I wouldn't have been introduced to the scheme, I wouldn't have been introduced to my mentors, and I wouldn't be sat here now.